My name is Vladimir Marinich, and I started at HCC in fall of 1970. The college offered me a salary of $15,000 a year and the rank of associate professor, and I took it. So I had a $4,500 reduction in my salary back then, and it was a little bit tight for several years, but I never regretted the move. Howard County was a rural county, and it was only with the development of Columbia that things began to change. I think in the second third of the 60s that a decision was made that there should be a community college in Howard County. Prior to that, Howard County kids who graduated from high school would go to Catonsville Community College. The myth is that the Rouse Company gave the 112 acres to the college for $5, and that is untrue. The cost was $300,000, and I think that the initial cost of the college, the single building, was a little bit over $3 million. Around 1969 and before that, it was farmland. Part of it was a big pasture that would now be about where the hospital is. The population of Columbia, I think, was really pretty small at the time, and there were many, many more Howard County residents than Columbia residents. Mr. Rouse and his associates understood that it should be the county's college. The president of the college, Dr. Alfred J. Smith Jr., who was the first president of HCC, and he was a visionary, totally dedicated to student learning, but he also believed that grading should be non-punitive. That is, if a student was having difficulties, you don't nail him if he doesn't, pass. I believe it's the first year, the full-time faculty were required to teach only 12 credits during a semester, okay? Normally the load was 15 credits in most other schools, and that was to give us time to get trained in how to develop objectives where you could demonstrate what the student learned and how the student learned it. And then at the end, when the student has to demonstrate that they have learned the content, how do we know that we can objectively state that the student did master the objectives? Dr. Smith also created a position, and I can't remember the exact name, but something like Director of Veterans Affairs. And we hired a gentleman whose function and responsibility was to work with vet students. And that was Dr. Smith, okay? Visionary, okay? But he also recognized the reality of the times. An always present highlight in my life is just being with students. That was just a constant great experience also. I became the first faculty advisor to the SGA. So we would talk about, dances every Friday, and yes, we had those. But then they kind of wanted to have their own space. Well, they could have a classroom, every other Friday, and well, that's okay, but that's kind of lame, right? Well, one of the students said, what about the barn and the silo that's on the other side of the valley? It's very, very pretty. It would be unusual, very kind of county-oriented, the old farmlands, et cetera, okay? So we went over one time and we looked through it. The barn was pretty beat up, but we thought that, well, we could probably do something with it. So we had a meeting and we decided that yes, we would continue further research on it. Well, several days went by, I think it was the weekend, and we had some rainy, windy weather. And when we, next time that we met, the barn and the silo collapsed completely. They were both upright, and the next day they were both flat on the ground. So that ended that project. In other words, that might have really saved my job. In my experience, and I have visited a lot of other community colleges in Maryland, but also outside of Maryland, Howard Community College is the best community college in Maryland. And I'll argue that point, till the cows come home, okay? And I believe Howard Community College is one of the best in the United States. It was a privilege to work here, and it was a blessing to be in the noblest of professions, education.